Unit 9, Day 2 notes. Today we're going to talk about parallelograms. Make sure you draw the parallelogram like I have in the top right corner. And then as we go through each one of these statements, we're going to add the appropriate information to the picture. So the first thing you need to know about a parallelogram is that it is a quadrilateral with both pairs of opposite sides parallel. So what that means is the two blue sides are the shortest sides and they're across from each other, so they're opposite. So we're going to indicate that they're parallel by adding the arrows. That also means the two red sides, which are the longer sides, are also across from each other, so they're opposite and they're also parallel. So give them arrows as well. The next statement reads, both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. Congruent again means same size. So we indicate congruent on a picture by using tally marks. So the two blue sides are congruent, and then the two red sides are also going to be congruent. Next statement, both pairs of opposite angles are congruent as well. Again, opposite means across from. So the angle in the bottom left corner will be congruent with the angle in the top right corner. So those are opposite, they're across. That also means the angle in the top left will be congruent with the angle in the bottom right because they're across from each other. Next statement reads, consecutive angles are supplementary. If you don't remember what consecutive means same side inside. Supplementary means that their measures add to equal 180. So I'm going to highlight which two angles are consecutive. So the angle in the top left is consecutive with the bottom left. They're both on the left side of that blue line, so that means they're on the same side. And then they're both in between two lines, so that means they're same side inside. So those are consecutive. Also, the top left and the top right are also consecutive. Just FYI for the future. And then the last statement reads, diagonals bisect each other. Bisect means cut into two equal parts. When you draw your diagonals on your picture, make sure you draw them dashed because they're technically invisible. So when you draw them dashed, you're indicating that they're kind of invisible, but they still exist. So there's one diagonal, and there's the other diagonal. So again, they're going to cut each other into two equal parts. So that part is congruent with this part. And that part is congruent with the part on the other side. So make sure you remember that the diagonals are going to split each other into two. Notice the different type of tallies that I've used. And so make sure you pay attention to which ones have the same type, because those will be the ones that are congruent. Next up, we're going to prove whether a four-sided shape, being a quadrilateral, is a parallelogram or just a normal quadrilateral. So the first five statements are going to look like the statements we just got done talking about. Also, you should redraw a parallelogram next to each statement like I have. And then we're going to mark them in according to what the statement is specifically saying at that moment. So the first statement reads, both pairs of opposite sides are parallel. So we're just going to show that the two short sides are parallel, and we're going to show that the two long sides are parallel by adding the arrows. So again, both of them, too short and too long, have to be parallel. The next statement says both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. So that means the two short sides are congruent and the two long sides are congruent. Keyword being both. That's why I emphasize the and so much. The third statement says both pairs of opposite angles are congruent. So we're going to mark the opposite angles with the same type of arcs. So bottom left, top right, get one arc. Top left, bottom right, get two arcs. So those two are opposite. And the same type of arc means that they're congruent. And statement 4 now says if the consecutive angles are supplementary, again, consecutive, same side inside, supplementary, the measures add to equal 180. So on this one, arcs won't be enough. You actually have to write some measurements. In the bottom left, I wrote 80. So I had to repeat that on the top right because they're opposite and they're congruent. And if I wanted the consecutive one to be add up to equal 180, the others had to be 100. So the top left and the bottom left are consecutive, as well as the top left and the top right are consecutive. And then the fifth step says the diagonals bisect each other. So again, we're going to demonstrate the diagonals using a dashed line. And we're going to show that they are bisecting by using tallies, or you can actually use actual numbers, and I'll demonstrate both. The first one, I'm going to use tallies on both sides. And then the second one, I'm going to actually use a number. As long as the number is the same on both sides, it's all good. And I decided to use 5, but you can use whatever number your heart desires. Now, the sixth statement looks a little different. For the last few, it came in 2s, usually. But the sixth statement says one pair of opposite sides are both, first blank being parallel, and the second blank will be congruent. So all it takes is one pair that's either both short or both long. Just one pair, and then they have to be illustrated to be parallel and congruent at the same time. So I'm going to take the two long sides and add my arrows representing parallel. And then I'm going to add tallies representing congruent. And at this point, it doesn't matter what my two short sides are. This is enough information to prove that this four-sided shape is a parallelogram. Now the seventh sentence reads, if one angle is supplementary to both of its consecutive angles. So again, to demonstrate this example, you have to actually use numbers in the angles. So I decided to use 80 and 100 again, keep it simple. So the bottom left is 80, the top left is 100. So the bottom right is also 100. And all it takes is just 3 this time. I don't need to label all 4. So the 80 is consecutive with the 100 on the top, and it's consecutive with the 100 to the right. So that's both consecutive, and that is enough information. So of these 7 statements we just went over, one of them has to be completely right and appropriately labeled, and that's enough information. So now we're going to practice some finding either missing angles or sides on parallelograms. So this first one is a missing angle, and it happens to be across from 135 degrees. So that means it is opposite of 135 degrees. And since it's opposite that angle, that means the two angles are congruent. So we're going to use angle equals angle. So in other words, question equals 135. Number 2, the question mark is a side this time, and it's the long side, and both long sides have the same tally marks. So that means they're both congruent. So that means we're going to use side equals side. So in other words, question mark equals 23. Number 3, the question mark represents an angle again. However, this time 70 is not across from it. It's consecutive with it. So that means they're supplementary, which means their measures should add up to equal 180. So that also means question mark plus 70 should equal 180 degrees. So if that's the case, then the question mark has to be 110 degrees. Number 4 says, in the parallelogram shown below, solve for x and determine the measure of angle M. I will let you answer those two on your own, but I'll help you set it up. What you should recognize is that angle A and angle T are consecutive. So that means they're supplementary, which further means that I should take the two angles, add them, and equal them to 180. So 80 plus 11x minus 10 equals 180. Now you finish solving for x and find the measure of angle M. Number 5, again, I will help you set it up, but you're going to finish solving for x and for y on your own. In the corners that have x, those two corners are across from each other. So that means they're opposite, which means they're congruent. So we're going to use angle equals angle. 5x minus 9 equals 3x plus 11. Now those green corners are consecutive with the corner that has 2y. So that means they're supplementary. So red plus green angle should equal 180. So your first option is to use 5x minus 9 plus 2y equals 180. Or you could use 3x plus 11 plus 2y equals 180. But you need to finish solving for x and for y on your own. This concludes your notes.